Hey all, and welcome to a back to basics video. Today I'm going to discuss making wet water. What's a good ratio to use? And I'll also demonstrate what happens when you don't use a wetting agent at all. Let's get started. I mix a ratio of dishwashing liquid to water 100 to 1. I'll typically make up a litre jug of water and add about 10 mils of dishwashing liquid. If you just think 1%, you won't go wrong. There are many thoughts out there about what type of liquid to use, whether it's low suds laundry detergent, hand soap, or even windscreen washing fluid. Everyone has their own method and they all seem to work quite well. However, depending on the type of liquid you choose, you may need to adjust the ratio slightly, maybe 2 or 3%. Try doing a little experiment like the one I'm about to set up and see how well your wet water absorbs into the scenery. To demonstrate the effectiveness of using a wetting agent, I've set up a small experiment. I'm using a small piece of extruded foam, lightly topped with some Woodland Scenics fine ground foam, and setting it on a slight angle. For test 1, I'm going to apply the glue straight from the eyedropper. I've not used a wetting agent to pre-soak the foam. As you can see, the glue beads up and doesn't absorb into the foam at all. The glue I'm using, by the way, actually has about 3% liquid soap in it as well. For test 2, I'm applying the wet water prior to applying the glue. As you can see, the wet water gradually bleeds through the foam. Applying the wet water from an eyedropper is not always the best method. In an upcoming video about dirt roads, I demonstrate the recommended way of applying wet water and glue to your scenery. Now as I apply the glue, it spreads through the foam evenly without disturbing the placement of the foam too much. And finally, in test 3, I've replaced the wet water with 99% alcohol. In a similar fashion to the wet water, it slowly bleeds through, allowing me to apply the glue without disturbing the foam. So what does wet water actually do, you may be asking? By adding soap to the water, it breaks the surface tension of the water, allowing it to soak into your scenery, thus allowing the glue once applied to soak right through the scenery, providing a good strong bond so the scenery will remain fixed in place. You may be thinking, why not just spray the glue right onto the scenery without using a wetting agent? Glue has a tendency to sit on top of your scenery as it dries, leaving a nice hard surface once it dries, but underneath the scenery is still loose. A light bump or hand rubbing across the scenery may be enough to disturb the glue crust, and the loose scenery below goes everywhere you don't want it, especially a problem with thick areas of ballast. The wetting agent will help the glue, once applied, to bleed right through the scenery all the way to the baseboard, giving a more reliable and strong bond. Well, I hope that gives you a good idea of how to make and use your own wetting agent at home, and now you have a good idea of why it's important to use wet water.